Hi everyone, and welcome to this video where we look at another member of my classic computer collection. And today we're going to have a look at the IBM PC XT, or the IBM XT as it's sometimes called. Now you can think of an IBM XT as simply an IBM PC with a hard disk and some extra slots. But it was really an historically significant computer in its own right. Firstly, it was cloned by many manufacturers, and it really was the machine that legitimized microcomputers in the corporate office, particularly as productivity tools. So let's have a look at it. The PC XT was a natural upgrade to the IBM PC, or IBM Model 5150 as it's sometimes referred to. Since 1981, the IBM PC had been slowly but steadily infiltrating corporate offices. It was a solid machine, but the two floppy drive system was increasingly stretched as more sophisticated software became available and larger data sets needed to be crunched. Another problem was the expansion slots. Unlike today, the PC mainboard only contained the bare bones of the system. Anything else like video, printer ports, serial ports, disk controllers, etc. needed to be added as separate expansion cards. The IBM PC only had 5 slots, and once all the essentials were added, there were very few slots left over for anything else. The IBM PC XT, released in 1983, solved both of these problems. By that time, hard disk prices had fallen and reliability had increased. The new model had a hard drive built in, and instead of 5 slots, it had 8. Most other things stayed the same though, including the 8088 processor, although the cassette interface was dropped. This ad shows Charlie Chaplin with extra muscle, and that's exactly what the IBM PC XT provided. Now users could run integrated office software such as Lotus 123, which incorporated a database, spreadsheet and word processing program, and allowed data to be shared amongst the components. This was a precursor to the Microsoft Office concept, and such data gymnastics were very difficult using just 2 floppy disks, so it was a big improvement over the original PC. So here's my little beauty. As you can see, I've got it hooked up to a green screen IBM monitor. I reckon there's nothing that says serious business quite like an IBM green screen monitor. This particular XT is one of the later revisions. It's got 640K on the main board. It's got a half-height 20 megabyte Seagate ST255 hard drive and an enhanced keyboard with the function keys along the top. It was probably manufactured about 1986. This shot shows the half-height hard drive on the right and 2 floppy drives on the left. The second lower drive was added later as its bezel doesn't match the top drive. It's a pity as it looks somewhat untidy, but it's quite typical in that bits and pieces were often added onto these machines later. So they did end up sometimes with a mishmash of parts. Coming around the back, there are sockets for power, the fan vent, and the card ports. Only one DIN socket in the middle. This is for the keyboard. Now, the earlier PC had a second DIN socket for a cassette recorder. There aren't too many cards in this one. I really wanted to configure it as a vanilla PC XT. It's the kind of typical machine an office might have used. As you can see, this one still has a few spare slots. So going from left to right along the ports, we can see a floppy disk port for those that wanted to add external drives, a serial port with a parallel port underneath, then at the end a video port with another parallel port under that. Here we have the back view with all the cords plugged in. Power to the monitor is provided by the power socket on the left. One interesting thing about the keyboard is the length of the keyboard cord. It does need to come from the back, so it does need a certain amount of length, but there's still enough for it to go onto your lap. Now, I do remember seeing some PC ads where this long cord allowing lap computing was extolled as a feature, but why anyone would want to use the keyboard on their lap in an office environment is a little beyond me. I thought a comparison of the PC and the PC XT mainboards might be of interest. So here's the IBM PC one. You note the 5 slots in the cassette port next to the keyboard one. And here is the XT mainboard. Sorry about the reverse orientation here, but you can see there are 8 slots and the cassette port is gone. A few fewer chips as well, but essentially the same physical size. And here's the machine with the hood removed. It's a little crammed around the drives, but it's easy enough to work on. I tend to view these old computers a bit like old cars. Easy to work on, not that hard to diagnose and fix. Whereas modern cars, like modern computers, are a complete mystery to me. Finally, regarding the hardware, here are some shots of the individual cards. First up is a Hercules Graphics adapter clone made by Paradise Systems. The Hercules Graphics card was a monochrome card which worked with the IBM monochrome monitor, but it could also display crisp graphics. Quite a few of the business packages supported Hercules Graphics for things like drawing graphs. Public domain software was also available which allowed a Hercules Graphics card to display monochrome CGA graphics. And this was quite useful for compatibility with many IBM PC and PC XT games. Now this card also sports a parallel printer port, just like the original IBM monochrome display adapter. Next up is a generic multi-function card. These were really common around the mid-1980s for PC XTs and clones. They normally contained serial and parallel interfaces and a battery-powered calendar clock chip. This one has a serial port and a parallel port attached. When this photo was taken, the battery had been removed, but there's certainly a lithium cell in there now. Then we have the hard disk controller card. Note there are no ports on the outsides. Cables ran from this to the hard drive as shown here. Finally there is the floppy disk controller. The drive cable attached to the card edge you can see on the end there. So 4 cards populate this particular PC XT then. Okay, time for a real life look at the machine. Now there are plenty of YouTube videos showing PCs and PC XTs booting. Most of them better than this one, so you're quite welcome to have a look at those, but I thought I'd just show you the machine working anyway. It's quite difficult to decide what to show people with these machines. In fact, they're so common and well known, but I'm thinking maybe younger people are not that familiar with them. So here we are booting up. You can hear the hard drive whirring in the background there. Camera's having a little trouble focusing on the screen, but XT goes through a memory check first, where it goes through the RAM and checks it's okay. As soon as that's done, it will then try to just check the drives, see what it's got available, and then try and boot off firstly the floppy drive, and if there's a floppy disk in there, it'll boot off that, and then finally the hard drive. So here we are, the boot sequence now finished. And I'll just show you some utility software that's used to check out the machine. Because these machines came in all different sorts of configurations, and PC-DOS itself, which of course was made by Microsoft, it didn't, at this stage, this is version 3.2 I think, PC-DOS version 3.2, it didn't really have many utility programs itself, so you tended to rely on third-party ones to check the configuration of the machine, exactly what it might have had in it, and also run some tests. So we're going to have a look at one called Check It. So here it is booting up. There are quite a few things you can do with Check It. You can see what sort of machine you've got. It goes through and it checks for things like the system components, looks for expanded memory, a maths coprocessor, identifies the BIOS manufacturer, all pretty useful things to know. And this particular menu option will give you a summary. Now hopefully you can see that. It's a little bit blurry, and certainly on my green screen monitor it's you haven't got those sort of blue and yellow colours there. Mine's a uniform green, so that's some artifact of the camera. So that tells us what our machine is. It says it's got a Hercules card, a couple of printer ports, a couple of disk drives. Here's just some of the other menus, and you can do an awful lot. One of the things you can do is look at the speed of the system. and this gives you a graphical representation of just how fast it is. So you can see it's pretty slow. They've got PC XT there on the left as a type of standard, and you can see the bar graph matches this exactly, which it should, because it is a PC XT. There's no maths coprocessor, so it'll tell us that. So not the fastest of the PC type 8088 machines. Certainly some of the clones were actually faster than the IBM machines themselves. So that was a quick look at Checkit. Another commonly used utility program in the day was one called PC Tools. This allowed you to do a lot of things with files and also with the disk itself. That was things that were often quite esoteric or difficult to do in DOS. Many of the things you could, functions, duplicate what you could do in DOS, but you didn't have to go and look up the complicated syntax in order to get what you want done. So, for example, if we wanted to perhaps view a text file like this README doc, we just needed to push the E for edit, and we'll get a view screen like this rather than typing out some complicated type command. So it was a piece of software that was very popular around this time, around 1985-86. Many people did use, at least that I knew with these machines, did use PC Tools. So pretty useful. So disk services as well, you can see a few of them down there. Let's just have a look at one of them. This gives you a disk map. So if you want to check if there's any bad sectors or just what the disk looks like as far as the number of sectors that are filled up and the number of sectors that are blank, it'll give you that. This is something that certainly later programs like ScanDisk and later machines with later versions of MS-DOS gave you, but with these early versions they didn't have those functions, so you could use something like PC Tools. As you can see, the hard disk is quite empty on this machine. I haven't got much software installed. I haven't got many games installed, but of course these machines weren't gaming machines. They were designed to sit in offices and for people to do fairly mundane and boring work on them, like word processing and analysing spreadsheets and the like, not for entertainment. But I'll put a few adventure games on here, some of the Zork series, and certainly they're the sort of games that you could play on a green screen mono 80 column text-based machine like this particular one. I do have a soft spot for Zork. It's probably the only Infocom game that I've actually ever played right through without cheating. That is Zork 1. I managed to get right to the end. Got 95% of the clues and tasks. I couldn't figure out how to open the egg in the end, and had to finally use a cheat sheet for that. But yeah, they are games that I used to play back in the 1980s. These text-based adventure games. So this is Zork 2. Many of you looking at this video will be familiar with these adventure games, but again, if you're somebody who's a different generation than me, you might not have seen these sorts of games. All text, essentially interactive fiction, where there's stories being told. You can move around. You normally have to make a map as you go so that you can retrace your steps, at least keep an overview of where you've been. Usually the people employed in these sorts of games, particularly the Infocom games, were professional writers. So the games tended to be quite clever, quite engaging, although they did require a bit of patience. Certainly not one. They're not games you could sit down and just complete in half an hour or so. Usually lots of difficult puzzles to solve, and certainly the environment tended to be pretty extensive. So here in Zork 2 we've wandered around a bit already, come to a dark place, so we've put our lamp on, and that'll let us continue on, and we can see the exits and the entrance and exactly what's in these particular tunnels. Now usually with these Infocom games there's a little bit of an introduction to them. There's a pamphlet or something that you read which introduces the game. In this particular one you've actually got to go quite a long way to find it, and got to get through several of these rooms, in fact to the north end of the garden, where if we go to the gazebo, which is sitting in the garden, we find some objects there, one of which is a newspaper, and if we pick up the newspaper and we read that, then what we see is essentially the introduction to the game. Talks a little bit about what it is, and just welcomes you to it. So we'll leave this particular adventure at this point. So that's it for my IBM PC XT. They're lovely machines. I do like the design. They're very solid looking. They're very solid feeling, in that they're heavy. They're made of pretty rugged material, and they just look retro and they look cool. And as I say, I particularly like the green screen. That just does it for me. So until next time, keep well, and we'll see you in the next video.